All right, now let's see what we have in this project. So basically what you see here is the combination of a default ASP.NET Core project and a default Angular 2 project that we create with Angular CLI. So as far as ASP.NET Core is concerned, here we have the familiar controllers and views folders. Potentially we could have a models folder, but this application is very simple. It has only one model, which is implemented next to sample data controller. This is our model, which could be in its own folder. So controllers and views represent our ASP.NET Core application. Now we have client app, which is the container for our Angular application. So we have the app folder, we have components, and here we have 5 components: app, counter, fetch data, home, and nav menu, which represents our navigation bar. Pretty simple, and it doesn't really need any further explanation. Now, what is interesting here is that in client app, we have 2 files to bootstrap this application: boot-client and boot-server. Boot-client is used to load this application in a browser, just like other Angular apps you have seen so far. But we can also run an Angular 2 app on the server, and this is used for server-side pre-rendering, which I'm going to talk about later in this section. So we can render Angular views on the server and return HTML markup to the client. So we use boot-server to bootstrap this application on the server. Now here we have another folder, dist or distributable, which is the result of compilation of our Angular app. So we have 2 JavaScript files, main-server, which is the compilation or more accurately transpilation of our TypeScript files, along with boot-server. So this is used to bootstrap the application on the server. We also have vendor.js, which is the compilation of all the third-party libraries we have here, like Angular, Bootstrap, jQuery, and so on. Now we have a similar dist folder under root. And once again, here we have 2 JavaScript files. One is main-client, which is the compilation of our Angular app, and boot-client to bootstrap the application in the browser, just like the Angular apps you have built so far. We also have vendor.css and vendor.js, which is the compilation of all the style sheet and JavaScript code for our third-party libraries. Now we should not touch this dist folder. This is just the result of compilation. What I want you to know is that when you compile your application and run it using .NET, this root folder is the root of your web application. And this local web server that is launched points to this folder. Now, earlier I told you when the user hits the homepage of the site, that homepage is rendered on the server and HTML markup is returned to the client. But the rest of the views are rendered on the client. Let me show you how this works. So let's go to the controllers folder. We have our home controller. Look, our index action returns a view. This action and the error action are the 2 actions that return a view. But if you look at the other controller, which is called sample data controller, our action returns an IEnumerable of weather forecasts. So any controllers and any actions we're going to build in the future should return data, not markup. So our home controller returns a view. Let's take a look at that view. We go to views, home, index. So here we have an app element, which is the container for our Angular app, just like what you have seen before. And we have 2 script references. One is to vendor.js and the other to main-client to load this application in the browser. Now, if you look at the app element, here we have an attribute, ASP pre-render module. And you can see it's pointing to client app /dist /main-server. So this attribute enables server-side pre-rendering, which I'm going to talk about in the next lecture. So let's take a look at a couple more things in this project. We have our project file, which is a JSON file. And here we have all the dependencies for the ASP.NET application. So if you want to add a server-side dependency, we add it here. Our client-side dependencies, as you know, are stored in package.json, like Angular/common, Angular/compiler, and so on. We also have a couple of Webpack configuration files. So you saw that we have 2 JavaScript files as the result of compilation of our client-side application. So webpack.config.js has all the necessary configuration for compiling our application code, and webpack.config.vendor determines how third-party libraries should be compiled. Now, the explanation of this is beyond the scope of this course. Webpack really needs its own course, and honestly, I'm not a Webpack expert. If you want to override the defaults and customize this configuration for your own environment, you really need to look at Webpack documentation. All right, next we're going to take a look at server-side pre-rendering in more detail.